I
So I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on something that I've been trying to work up a design for. I'm so sorry if you hear a vacuum in my background, but hopefully not. Okay.
don't hear
Which
it.
screen am I sharing? Do you see Google Docs or do you see?
The Google Docs agenda.
Mhm.
Okay, wrong share. Share other screen. Cool. All right. Are we on the other screen now? GitLab?
Yes.
Proposal
Cool.
inheritable group.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. So um, when you're working with protected branches, they have like a table view. I'm going to pull up my GDK as I'm talking through it. And we're going to bring some of that functionality into the group level because it doesn't exist today. But what we're starting with is just the default master or main, whatever it's called, the default branch rule. So my initial proposal is to design it as such, like it's going to literally just be that table. But I wasn't sure if I should make it more of a form or just use the table design. Because I mean, my aspiration is that we'll be able to do more protected branch rules than just the default. So I thought it'd be easier to start with the table. But I mean, in terms of like implementing a design, it might actually be easier to do a form, but it wouldn't scale well. So I don't know, what do you think? Do you think go with the table? Maybe start with the form? What do you think?
The first two things that came to mind for me are that I've been focused heavily on mobile lately. So I'm curious how much concern there is for mobile. And I don't think that we've had a ton of concern, unfortunately, for mobile in the past. Maybe it doesn't matter that much in this particular context. But I feel like the form would be better for that. And then you mentioned scalability. And the first thing I thought when I saw this was that I thought the form would be more scalable than the table, but you were saying the table would be more scalable?
Well, I'm just thinking if you're trying to show like for example, in protected branches right now, like you can see there are several rules specified here or specific branches that are specified in here. I can't imagine having a form for all of these necessarily, but I do agree. I think it would be better. I mean, this table, it just has not been updated. It's still in Haml and it has not had a lot of UI components updated. So it doesn't even respond to like the way that it would break down each record into an individual row, like some other table designs do. So yeah, I mean, I definitely would rather design, or I would rather us implement a component that we can scale well in different viewport sizes. This table really doesn't function well in that regard. It just compresses and then you have to scroll, which is, I mean, it's fine. It works, it's just less than desirable.
Well, it's something I've noticed with the competitor analysis I did for mobile is that most of our competitors do not have a lot of heavy DevOps functionality as part of their products for mobile. It's mostly issue tracking and management. So it may be
Right.
kind of non-issue in this case, but just
Yeah,
wanted.
I mean, I can't really see people managing their settings configuration, particularly from a mobile device. Be really weird. Like I guess you'd have to have like your group owner on a beach vacation and needing to change a setting while they're sitting there. Like maybe that would be a case where it would happen, but by and large, people are using GitLab at their desk. They're not
Yeah.
doing it for these reasons on mobile as much.
Yeah, I was going to echo that. I think the mobile stuff is more specific to what Holly's working on versus a lot of this.
Yeah.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, I tell you what, I'll come up with a version this week. I'm gonna miss next week because I'll be on vacation, but I'll circle back with a couple compare and contrasting ideas for like what it looks like maybe in the first release and maybe like a bit how it would work in a visionary perspective and see what y'all's thoughts are again in 2 weeks.
Yeah, or feel free to tag me. I don't want to speak for Daniel, but feel free to tag me if you want in between now and then, if you want sooner feedback, and I'm happy to jump in and add some comments.
I know, same for
Yeah.
me. I would agree.
Cool.
Good luck with your
Absolutely.
showing.
Yeah, appreciate it. I could touch on real quick, Daniel, since you asked last week and I wasn't here, what I did to the make your prototype work a little bit better.
Yeah.
Let's see, let's open that Figma link.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out what
Um,
happened. And I guess it was you that fixed it because then I saw it on the agenda.
Yeah, I threw it in there. Just I was kind of like messing with it to see if I could get it to play a little nicer.
Mhm.
So I mean, oh, that hides the play button. I was just kind of hacking at it just to make it look like things were lining up nicely. I assumed you wanted to be able to click here, have them click on the calendar, sets the date, and then clicking it resets it. I
Yeah,
assume that was what you were trying to do.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I created just like another like calendar picker element that aligned better and like faked a frame that's overlaying it. So all of it's kind of set in like the interaction styles. I was really just going off of what you had, just kind of picking different options. Okay, thanks, Figma. I'm working. Let's see, where's the interaction on this one? There we go. So this one is using a click. It's using the open overlay. And then I think I'm doing a custom spot, which is where you had laid it. And then on this one, it connects to this guy. Again, I think it's doing like it's swapping it out and it's putting it in a specific location.
But
And
is that
then
going to
after that,
swap with the, is that swapping the picker with the date set piece?
mhm,
Like,
yeah.
is it causing an
So
unexpected result?
yeah, so it basically is replacing that input box with this like white container. So it's appearing in the same position,
Mhm.
which helps it just kind of look like it's in line. And
Right.
I was just going off of what Daniel had already had. And
Mhm.
so then like clicking away is making it go like reset itself again. So
Yeah, I think that was the problem because I was using that empty white space on the right to try and align the buttons and everything. And so it was just flying all over the place.
yep. So I was just trying to kind of build off of what you had already done with your first one and just making it the same dimensions so that when it would appear, it would sticky in the same place. Just hacking at it a little bit more.
I don't know,
So
that's perfect. That worked great. Thanks for that.
yeah, no problem. Hope that helps and gives you some inspiration in the future if you ever come up against it again. But
Yeah, that was basically I was trying to troubleshoot. It was like, why is this flying around? It's like, I knew it was because the swap was wrong and my positioning was weird.
yeah, it was probably looking for the same size object, but since it wasn't the same size, it was aligning it weird because it was like, oh, put this left align or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But all right, I gotta go.
So yeah, good luck.
Good
Love you
luck.
guys. Talk to you later.
Hey, Lebar. I don't know if you caught, oh, I couldn't hear you. Try to talk again. You weren't muted.
Oh,
There we
can you hear me now?
Yeah, no,
Wrong
I
audio
can.
source.
I don't know if you heard, but Austin is trying to sell a house and had a showing, so he had to.
Oh, no,
hop
I missed that part. Nice.
He had to hop off from that. How are you doing?
Good, good. Didn't have anything to really contribute today. Kind of working on some little bit of like problem validation around our Slack integration. So I don't know if both of you have seen, I posted a link to a survey. I think Holly, you might have already.
I did.
Yeah, submit some answers there. I think, and I was bugging Daniel about it last time since it was just me and him on the call.
Yeah, we
So,
did like a little walkthrough.
thank you both for the feedback. Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead, Daniel.
No, just saying we did a walkthrough last time. It was good.
I don't know if my my experience with that is kind of less likely, but those were my thoughts on the subject.
No, appreciate it. All thoughts appreciated. Thank you. Yes, I'm at the stage now where I'm kind of synthesizing and hopefully bubbling up some more common kind of user stories that we could validate externally. Yeah, thanks for bringing that
Sure.
up.
I'm not very good at this. I have to tell y'all, I'm trying to be better about it, but I find myself wanting to just focus on the conversation. And the moment I start typing, I feel like I'm not paying attention quite as much to the conversation. So it's this constant
Yeah.
back
Yeah,
and
for
forth.
sure.
I agree. I have the same problem.
So when I see somebody else jump in and do it, I usually let them do it. But then I'm like, I need to step up and do that more.
Yeah, same.
I'm happy to share what I'm working on unless anybody has anything. Did you have anything like you were looking for feedback additionally, Libor, or just?
No, I'm just in the phase of, I just have to work through it and I'm still synthesizing. So, no, yeah, I'd love to see what you're working on.
So, hang on, will show my prototypes for work items. And I'll put in a link to my Figma file as well. Let me share my screen. So, I don't recall how much y'all may know about this project, but this is the project that was like, we called it CollabJex for a while. I did a presentation on it in the showcase. It eventually evolved to planning objects. Now they're called work items. And basically, to try to summarize, we discovered that we needed to refactor issues. And so since we were going to be redoing it anyway, Kristen and Gabe said, well, now's a good time to make it better and to prep for kind of what we have in terms of a long-term vision for issuables in the future. So our thought is we create a base thing, a base object that we're calling a work item, and a work item can eventually be an issue. It could be an epic. It could be a bug, a feature, any of these other potential things. And we have existing things. Again, we have issues, requirements, incidents. So we have a few like variations of an issue currently, and they will also have to be kind of converted over at some point. But there's a little bit of, I think, a little bit of competing intentions in that one PM wants to focus on making child elements for epics and the other PM wants to focus on making making these things, one, a better user experience, but two, also prepping for us to be able to make them customizable. I don't know how familiar you are with Notion, but kind of along the lines of Notion where you can have a custom kind of template thing like an issue, and then you can build the widgets in that you want. You can say, I want to have breadcrumbs. I don't want to have health status, things like that. So this is just the very, very, very basic MVC of that thing. And we decided after a lot of conversations that we wanted to make it mobile first because the mobile experience isn't great for issues. So we want to go ahead and be thinking about that now. For MVC, which will only be put behind a feature flag to a small subset of people at the company, we are going to have title, assignees, description, and status, and that's it. And then before it gets into the hands of customers, we'll have more built in. But let me just share the prototype. I'm in the process right now of creating some annotations and would love any feedback that y'all have about that too, but I'll get to that in just a moment. So hopefully it's set to the right screen as the start screen. Yeah. So here's an example of focusing on it from mobile. I did a competitor analysis, looked at 4 different competitors, and there were some similarities in all of them. One was having inline editing for titles and descriptions. And so I did a lot of discovery surrounding that. So the thought here is that you can click and type in, we're just going to assume that we've entered a title, typed in a title. We would have no additional functionality in the title edit. We wouldn't have bolding or, you know, italicizing or anything like that, which we don't have currently anyway. But you can add a title and just with a title, create your work item. So I'm still a little concerned about that. I think that we will still probably need to be able to assign a type, but we'll add that in, I assume, in the next phase. So let's say that I've added in this title. Maybe I do want to go ahead and add a description. So my thought is that the description will bring up a panel where you can edit, kind of makes that entire panel like an editable section, like the whole page becomes editable. So in that case, maybe you would click in, I just realized I need to include this editor on the previous screen, but let's say that you have entered in your description, you've got your buttons down here, your controls for managing the editor functionality. I'm still working through these buttons and trying to kind of figure out how I want to lay them out. So that's still work in progress. And Gabe wanted to see some alternatives to having the write and preview tabs. I've got those on the desktop, but I need to think through how that's going to work on the mobile setting as well. I also don't like having kind of competing buttons here. So obviously with a mobile device, you have your own keyboard, which has its own button. I think we can customize that, but I don't necessarily want to remove native functionality. So that's something else that is still kind of being considered. But let's say that I've entered this information in. Obviously the editor controls are now down at the bottom of the view, which also is going to be the case on desktop. So I hit save, and now I've got a title, I've got a description. I'm proposing that we truncate the description so that when we eventually add in comments, comments aren't just pushed way down below. And some of that comes from feedback from users in that we found title and comments were much more important than description. Description is important, but most people had a tendency to want to read the title and the comments and then come back to the description if they had to, but they didn't really want to spend a lot of time in it, which I thought was interesting. So we would truncate it and give them the ability to scroll and see more. Managing assignees would happen in a panel potentially like this. So you would have the ability to assign yourself, or you could search. This of course would bring up the keyboard, so it would be a little jump. Something Gabe wants me to explore is bringing this all the way up to the top anyway, so that you don't necessarily have it kind of down at the bottom, but I kind of like the thought of being able to see a little bit of the information in the background while you're adding your assignees, just because I know so many of us work on so many different issues per day, it could potentially be easy to lose a little bit of that context. So that's something that we'll have to continue talking through. But let's say I've entered in Nora and I select her. Now she shows here, and I can either click to remove her here, or I can just click done, and she shows in this assignees window. My thought here is that we would not show all assignees. We would show 3, and then anything after 3, we would have a number with like a little plus beside it, just to show that there were more. But on average, it seems like we only have about 1 to 3 assignees generally for issuables. So I don't anticipate that being a big concern. And then status would also be something you could potentially just click and change here on the spot. Partly because we had so many users looking at our status badge and thinking that it was a button. And after talking with Gabe, it's like, well, why not make it a button actually? Why not make it something instead of just hiding this in quick actions and hiding it behind a menu? We can still put it in those places, but also allow it to be something where users can choose to just change the status by selecting that item if they want to. Any questions about the mobile view? Any thoughts? There's also a desktop view, but I know that's probably a lot of stuff to take in itself.
I think it's good to have it reduced feature set.
Mhm.
It's kind of like a start. My only feedback would be, tightening up some of the graphics, some of the layout and stuff, but that's, we'll say this wireframe.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on the specifics as to what might be tidied up. I'd love to hear it, because a lot of this has been so iterative, so many changes, that sometimes those refinements get lost in the process. But I'm always finding ways to improve it.
Like just off the top, like I think there's a little bit too much white space, or the thing is the components are not segmented clearly. I think like having like little container blocks might be more helpful.
Mhm.
I don't know if the title needs to be that large.
Okay.
The status feels odd, like a waste of space horizontally.
I did actually explore a few variations of this. So I originally explored having them side by side to make the kind of most of that space. And that's how most of our competitors do it. And I presented these 3 options. This is more so showing how labels could potentially display, but I presented these 3 options internally, and overwhelmingly the feedback was to go, actually, this is recently changed, but the feedback was to go with the layout that I had presented a moment ago with everything stacked. And then Krista came back and said, how about we try putting them side by side like this, or maybe even set it kind of like this. And that still feels a little odd to me. It feels a little like, one, we're going to eventually add in more things. So how do those things fit in this context as opposed to something more vertical? Personally, I liked this flow better just because I thought that I guess more this flow because I kind of like the labels left aligned, but I thought that it made better use of the horizontal space, which is already limited, and felt a little more well organized. But definitely appreciate the feedback and would love any thoughts you have on these examples versus the other as well.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, Daniel, sorry.
No, just to kind of expand on that, I think, again, these look better. Like the first one on the left feels more logical. Like I think you have to come at this from a perspective of a mobile app and not how do you convert this to a responsive view. And if you rethink from a mobile app perspective, a lot of the architecture changes. I'm not sure if that's going to be helpful or more problematic, but if the idea is that we're going to try and use this as a focus feature for within mobile, we need to reevaluate that as a perspective and not just because we try to fit things from the live view into a mobile screen.
I couldn't agree more. And this is also something that I've been pushing back on when it came to the research I did with the competitor analysis. All of our competitors so 3 out of the 4 that I looked at, 3 immediately redirected you to use their mobile app when you tried to access the product on a mobile device, specifically on like a phone. The 4th, I thought had a true responsive experience, but the more I looked into it, it actually has a separate mobile site. So it is still responsive web, but it's not the same code exactly, at least just based on the structure I looked at in DevTools. Sorry, y'all, I got no sleep last night, but DevTools is what I'm trying to say. So it was apparently different code bases to me, which made me think they have a separate mobile site altogether. So I think that in the long run, we need to consider having a separate mobile experience that's just focused on issue tracking and management primarily, because as we talked about with Austin, there aren't a lot of products that seemingly are offering anything deeper than that. But that's not in the cards for now. And so I'm being told to just focus on MVC for this and make it mobile friendly. And part of the challenge I ran into was, how does a layout like this translate to desktop? And to just kind of show, I explored a lot of opportunities there, but this is kind of where we are currently with a desktop. And again, eventually we'll have additional metadata and comments and all of that. Gabe feels strongly that we don't need to have labels associated with some of these items, because I originally had, as you can see on the mobile view here, I've got assignees as a label over the assignee. And my thought is that eventually we're going to add in additional metadata, and some of those things might not be quite as clear. He feels strongly that we need to have it as clean and minimal as possible and not have titles. So that's something I want to talk about with Jeremy today from an accessibility standpoint. What are the risks that we're looking at? All of my UX alarms go off too when I think about removing things that I think help to address the learnability and discoverability of features in a product. And removing labels can do that. We're already taking some risks by making it inline edit, which presumably would not necessarily have an explicit edit or save button in some cases. So I'm happy to walk through these, but I want to actually pause as well and just give y'all a chance if you have any other thoughts or comments about what you've seen. And thank you again, Daniel, for your feedback. That's super, super helpful, and I appreciate it.
Happy to share.
Yeah, I think Daniel brought up a good point about, whether it's like a mobile, just a responsive experience versus like a more native kind of experience. I think that's, yeah, that's a really important thing to consider. One thing I was just going to mention, Holly, was I was wondering if you, when you're doing the mobile layouts, whether you were trying to use or whether you use like the Figma app on your iPhone to actually test how it kind of feels.
I did. And that was so helpful. The Figma mirror, that was really helpful because I found that even just looking at it and even prototyping it on my laptop was not the same as having it in my hand and knowing like where the thumb was going to be and kind of getting the feel for it. So yes, that was a huge, huge benefit to have that.
Nice, nice. Agree. Yeah. Yeah. When I first discovered that, I don't know what I was using. I was like, oh, this is great. It's a whole different, whole different experience to actually feel it in your hand. So that's good.
I actually encouraged the PMs to get it as well and to try to test it themselves using that, because I do think that it changes the experience. I mean, I really think that it helps us to get more of an accurate feel for what that is going to be like when it's on a mobile device versus just viewing it on a large, wide desktop and having the precision of a mouse as opposed to the kind of clumsiness of a fingertip to navigate around.
Yeah, that's something I would definitely agree about, is that in pushback to say, oh, we want to just do MVC, is like, well, switch this and view it in your hand and tell me, does this MVC make sense? I think a lot of the pushback would be like, well, you're right, it's not really a good experience. And I would not want to push out a, meh experience just because it's MVC, right?
I don't either, but I'm curious if y'all have thoughts on whether or not you've had to do that. And how you address that experience. Like, have you felt you had to push something out that was not complete or as polished as you'd like? I mean, I think we all have, but even to the point where you feel like a good experience is being sacrificed to a degree.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for me, I feel like sometimes, it doesn't come out as polished as I'd want it to be, or I know I already know that we already have follow-up issues for something when we release it, but it's never to the point where the user can't complete the task. I always feel like it's going to be functional. It's going to work. It's not going to be, it's not going to be a broken experience. So I feel like as long as the MVC in my mind is not broken and the user can complete the task, I think it's shippable. And as long as I know we can iterate on it fast, that's good. So.
And if we can learn from it, I think too is.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
I think something to expand on that is to make sure that if it's, they can complete the task, but how would they do that? By making sure the foundational aspect of the MVC is there. So focusing on the foundational aspects of what's the most interactive or interacted with pieces, and focus on that as the MVC, and try and get that as usable as possible, so that the user doesn't have the problem completing the task, and then you iterate from that. Like, for example, I don't know how often somebody creates a new issue versus goes and looks at the issue. So perhaps less focus on the creating of the process and more so about the reading of the issues and then responding, perhaps. That could be the first thing, or then something more, under the hood, redesigning the layout or the architecture of the page to be more compartmentalized, so that when it does collapse on a mobile, it does automatically fit that interface that you experience with a mobile experience. And that's something that we really haven't done much from the pajamas aspect, is that what do these components look like architecturally, as organisms. Nick keeps pushing this and it's not really going further anywhere, sadly, but this is something that might relate to that, where if these are defined as organism type components, how they collapse, how they look across different viewports. And that's where the MVC is, perhaps.
The MVC is not to do that, but that is definitely part of the kind of roadmap for this, is to consider each of those elements and then evaluate not only how the mobile experience comes across, but also how we can tweak and improve those existing things so that they are more customizable. That's part of the extensible issues thing, if y'all are familiar with that issue. If not, I'm happy to share that as well. But I think we're actually at time, but I'm happy to tag y'all in this if y'all are interested in giving any additional feedback. And thank you so much for the feedback so far. This is a big project and there are a lot of new pieces to it. And that makes me a little on edge, because I know that we've taken the time to kind of vet and get feedback on and evaluate the progress of and the functionality and user experience of the existing patterns that we have. And so introducing a lot of new patterns makes me nervous, but I've expressed those concerns several times, and I'm told even by engineers, we're moving forward with making new things. So I'm just going to keep moving forward with it as well, and get as much feedback as I can as I go.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome.
Yeah, one quick thing, Holly, I'm just curious if you had a chance to maybe like build a really quick prototype and just either maybe ship it around internally before maybe doing user testing and just seeing if someone can complete the task of, you know, creating an issue in this mobile context.
I did create, so this is I have the prototype for the desktop and for the mobile. And I did do a little bit of just quick internal stuff, but it wasn't really formal and polished. This was actually just last week. So
Okay.
I do want to get it on usertesting.com and just get some quick feedback on that. But yeah, I think today actually I'll be wrapping up annotations for the engineers. They've asked me to go through and identify everything that's currently in GitLab UI and make a note of that. But then I can go ahead and get some testing in place. I've already talked with Anna about it, so it should be something that we can get set up pretty quickly. But yeah, great question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's hard for going over here.
Well, awesome. Unless y'all have anything else, that's all that I had for today.
Well, we'll see you later. We can end it there.
All right. Thank y'all. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
You too. Thanks.